It's time for the Week in Mobile, episode number 15, recorded Friday, May 13th, 2011. Visa, virus, and video. It's time for the Week in Mobile, episode number 15, brought to you by, well, no one, unless you want it to be brought by you. If you do, reach out, untether@gmail.com. My name is Rob Woodbridge from untether.tv, and with me, as always, is
Jeff Bacon.
Jeff Bacon.
Sorry, my timing was a lot there.
Yeah, it's all right. We blame it on Skype.
Yeah.
Jeff Bacon from, he's at the Suave Hog, about.me/Jeff Bacon, and purveyor of all things mobile and strategic in the mobile space, obviously, at Ascension Cross Media, formerly Bitheads. Did I get it all right? Even with a business card. I don't have one. Isn't that sad?
I see it, but yeah, it's my new card. But yes, I'm from the stately offices of Bitheads here, which don't show up very well on this video since all you see is this plain wall behind me. But if you were looking out there,
yes,
you'd think, wow.
It is one of the coolest offices in this fair city of ours, and absolutely, if you are in the city, you should go and stop by and take a look at it because it is pretty incredible. It's a refurbished old movie theater
with one screen left.
Yeah, and all the seats up there. It's pretty amazing. And they're so packed in there that they even had to use the old projector room for an office space, which is pretty funny. So that's enough. Maybe Ascension Cross Media could fill in that hole that we have at the beginning, the brought to you part. Well, this is episode 15. We skipped a week, mostly because of the fact that you were in Florida at BlackBerry World.
Yeah.
And we did touch base over that period of time when they made some announcements around Bing. But quickly, how was it? Was it everything that you had hoped?
It was a good conference this year. It was the largest. It was formerly BlackBerry Wireless Enterprise Symposium. When this was the largest version of that conference that they've had. I think there were 6,000 plus people there at the conference. And there was a pretty good buzz this year. I skipped it last year. And going back again this year, it's a nice... it's a nice conference for really getting in touch with the BlackBerry community, and it's certainly a very raw BlackBerry conference, which you would expect. That's the whole point of having it, as is the Apple conference, as is the Google I/O conference that they hold. But there's definitely a lot of really good information, and as always, a lot of good access to people within RIM that are actually making product decisions to go and talk to and see what's going on, what's happening, give your opinion and feedback, like right to the people that make the decisions versus kind of going through a PR consultant or through the great alliance partner reps that are there who I have great relationships with. But it's always great to hear right from the product managers directly and then see all the announcements that are made. And we covered most of them last week, but certainly the buzz in the keynote where Ballmer came on stage to announce Bing was quite impressive. Of course, when they announced that everybody was getting a free playbook, the applause was not minimal, to say the least.
Yes.
And that was great as well. So, and they did a fantastic job of putting that conference on. I'm always impressed by how RIM does there. The food's amazing. It's really well organized, and even giving out 6,000 playbooks, it wasn't a stampede. It was organized well, and you had to move fast in that line because they were giving them out as fast as you could walk up to the counter. So, very, very impressed.
It's like the playbook Nazi, right? Like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld. No playbook for you if you can't make up your mind, right? You had to pick it and run.
This is more like show up, show a minimal piece of ID, get a playbook.
Well, I've always liked Wes or BlackBerry World or whatever you want to call it, and I've always liked it because it's in Florida and it's warm, and they do put on a good show, and usually the speakers are great, and the announcements are okay, but it seems to have accelerated, and even moving from BlackBerry World to Google I/O, it just seems that Google is making the same announcements that they did last year around some of the stuff, like the cloud music sharing. It's called, like Google Music Beta. These guys are real engineers, marketing geniuses, all of them, right?
Everything is called beta when Google releases it, and for like years afterwards.
Well, and even talking about Google TV and the destruction, not the destruction, but we've got a story about something similar to that, which is what we're going to cover today. But it was I think that the hype was around there, but more of the hype was around getting the free hardware. Like everybody walked out of there with a tablet one day, and the next day they walked out with a voucher for for a netbook running Chrome OS.
Which I've got and is worth about as much as the voucher cost to print. So.
It's exactly nice. Well, it's quite the event, and I think that one of the things that is obvious is that when RIM does an entire conference around wireless and what they're doing, and then Google, which is a multidisciplinary company and has different forms of revenue and different streams, it spends a whole day on Android and making some serious Android announcements, and I think that it just shows how pervasive. And then the second half is Chrome and the rest of the stuff. But it just shows how pervasive this is and how important this is for everybody in this industry, and it's just getting so big. So
it's something I'm going to have to get myself to the Google conference and the Apple conferences and just see how they compare to BlackBerry World, because it's always a very good atmosphere on BlackBerry World, and the speakers, the keynote speakers, they had Dean Carman on, who invented the Segway amongst many other things.
Yeah,
it was an amazing speaker. It had a great vision for improving education around science and technology, which is of course one of Mike Lazaridis' pet projects within the Waterloo region, who's a co-CEO of RIM. And he was an amazing speaker. And Malcolm Gladwell, who I'd heard mixed reviews on, was a very good speaker as well. I was very impressed with that as well. So it was certainly an entertaining keynote to see those two speakers and get some insight from their minds and how they see the world.
Well, I love Gladwell. I love him. Like a man crush. Gary Vaynerchuk, Malcolm Gladwell, Clayton Christensen for a little while there, Bruce Springsteen's an infatuation, and Derek Jeter. That's about it. Wait a second. We better get into some news, Bacon.
You and Jeter, right?
Me and Jeter. Well, he's always having an off year. But, so 3 stories we want to cover today. We want to talk about Visa and what they're calling the announcement that they made about the digital wallet. We want to cover the virus overload on Android. And we also want to talk about the video download application from HBO. So we got Visa virus and video. Let's roll it with that was Jeff's Visa virus and video. He's very proud of that. Let's roll it with this Visa announcement of a digital wallet. Cool stuff. And what's cooler is that it actually makes it sound like we know what we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Like that I mean, it's so funny to listen to what Visa is saying now and look back at things we've been talking about over the last 6 months, and not just on this podcast, but just conversations that Rob, you and I have been having for quite a while on mobile payments and technology, and how when you listen to Visa, when you watch which everybody needs to watch it. I'll put the link up on my blog post for this podcast, and I think Rob will do the same. But you have to watch this 2-minute video by Visa introducing their vision for mobile payments for the future and how they are taking a step back and looking at not just how can they cram mobile payments into the card that everybody uses, but how they can revolutionize mobile payments.
Well, this was a big announcement, and what's funny about this, not funny about this, but what's great about this announcement is that it's not forthcoming, it's not patent pending, it's not a vision statement. It's like it's coming in parts of the U.S. and Canada by the end of 2011, right? So this really is. Let's go just get a little bit of information on this. It's an e-wallet, and what that means is that this is going to be your transaction piece, regardless if it's a credit card, regardless if it's your debit card or a points card or loyalty card, regardless if you're doing it on a mobile device or if you're doing it on a tablet or a laptop. What they want to do is facilitate easy transactions or painless transactions in order to be able to, it should be as easy as handing out cash, and this is much easier. And what comes with that from Visa is all of Visa's infrastructure. And we've talked about this before on the show, that these guys aren't going to sit back and let anybody else have this. Visa companies or credit card companies own the infrastructure or have leased it or have created the relationships so that it's accepted worldwide. You get those calls if somebody's using your credit card fraudulently or you're using it in something you've never done before. And that's the infrastructure you pay for. So wrap around like basically the concept of a wallet around that, accepted everywhere, and secured with their security and their attention to detail and fraud detection. It's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the digital wallet. When you think about it, one of the big I guess, barriers to adoption for the digital wallet is choosing a digital wallet. Do you choose small company X? Do you choose medium-sized company Y? Do you choose retailer Z? Like, how do you choose whose digital wallet to use? You know, the same kind of thing happened with payment cards, and you know, you can still get the Brick card or a Sears card or whatever, but more and more those companies are partnering with Visa or with MasterCard for co-branded cards versus running their own financial payment system in place, because A, you get the brand name of something people already trust, and B, it's way cheaper to do that, to partner with someone who already has an infrastructure in place. So, you know, a digital e-wallet for consumers to adopt it, having the Visa name behind it is, I mean, how many people already trust Visa? How many people have a Visa card? I mean, the overlap of people who have MasterCard and Visa is also pretty high. So the combination of people who have MasterCard and Visa is over 100%, right, of all credit card holders. So figuring on what, like 60% of people who have a credit card have a Visa card, maybe? I don't know. I have no idea. That's a number just kind of pull it out of the air. But, you know, I'm sure it's more than 50, and I'm sure MasterCard's more than 50 as well. But there's such huge companies that have really a shareholder backed reliability for security. Like, they have to have security. They can't take any risks. A small company who I won't name any of the small companies there to besmirch them, because I don't believe that they're doing anything wrong, but a small company needs to make it big. And the risk of not making it big is just as high as the risk of a security breach. So small companies almost have an incentive to push forward through features and distribution over security, even if they say it's secure, just because if they fail, it doesn't matter whether they're secure or not. If they succeed and they're insecure and they don't get broken into, then they can make it secure later. Where Visa, MasterCard, companies like that, they can't do that. They have to be secure from day one.
Absolutely. And you know, what they're talking about doing are things that it's not just about the credit card transaction, which is what they're securing right now, right? Visa is securing your credit card transaction against fraud and illegal use. But what they're talking about is e-commerce, mobile commerce, micropayments, social networks, which is very interesting, and person-to-person payments. So this is getting into the PayPal space and you know, Facebook credit space, and some of the biggest names, at least in Canada, certainly the Royal Bank of Canada, which is I think Canada's largest commercial entity, is involved in that. This is really going to happen. This is not something that's fiction. With that kind of endorsement, it's pretty amazing, and for consumers, man. You know, managing it all from one place, you know, for good or for bad, with that kind of level of security on it, I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to just be able to have, you know, basically one bill, right? And I love that.
I totally agree, and I think as we mentioned, and as you'll see if you watch the 2-minute video from the Visa director or VP of product development, I believe. It is about more than just the one credit card you've got. It's about aggregating the information that you need for payments. And you can see the path that he's not mentioning, which is potentially the future for proving your identity as well. But initially, it's around payments, and that you'll basically have a separate system for proving your identity. But it's a natural to see that those merge in the future, to say, okay, once you've proven your identity, just pay with your identity. Like, what do you need 6 different cards for? What do you need something different? It's me. You know, if you know it's me, then you know you can take whatever payment form I'm giving you, and it's this digital payment form. It's to me. It's not to somebody else. It's not fraudulent, and that reduces costs for everybody. You know, fraud charges, especially for digital transactions, are huge. They're massive. They're one of the biggest expenses that anybody doing digital transactions has. So having a system like an e-wallet in place that has the extra security that can remove some of those fraudulent charges, that's worth a lot of money.
Well, and it really is. It also kind of points a direction, and you'll see a little clip in the video when you watch it, and maybe through the magic of editing, you already have watched it, and I've inserted it right into here at this very moment or previous to this. But there's a little spot in the video where they start talking about aggregating the data and pushing deals to you, pushing coupons to you, pushing things of interest to you, and boy, oh boy, oh boy, this all of a sudden looks very disruptive when it comes to incumbent companies that have really been left unfettered and actually allowed to grow to a point where they're huge. So this is one of those instances where I think companies like Groupon are in deep trouble when it comes to this, because, as you said, Visa accepted everywhere. Visa, global brand, Really easy. Visa already partnered with pretty much every single business on the planet. Hi. Buy Groupon. And I mean, by buy, I mean bye-bye and you should have been bought. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I thought of that exact same thing. That's like one line that's stuck in there in that video, right? That it's so easy to pass over, but if you are paying attention, when you hear that line, it's like suddenly your ears perk up and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Did you say that? It's like, was that just the end of Groupon? Was that the founders of Groupon going, damn, I should have taken that $4.7 billion from Google?
Well, you know, it just seems, you know, one of the biggest challenges with Groupon, one of the biggest, I guess, the benefits of Groupon is that they have, you know, this sales force out there pounding the pavement and getting all these businesses involved. But Visa already has that sales force, right? They're already in there. They're already in the businesses. They know how to do this. And oh, by the way, they've aggregated so much data on you at this point that they can predict what it is that you'd be interested in, provided you give them permission to do that.
Groupon has, and other third-party services that start up have to ask you for information.
Yeah.
Visa has that.
Yeah.
It's not a privacy issue. You're already trusting Visa to make payments. The exchange of having your bill, knowing what's on there, and you would then opt in. Customers would opt in to say, yeah, you know what? Give me 2% less interest rate on my credit card in exchange for sending me one offer a month based on my purchase history. And that's what people want. Nobody wants random offers. Even Groupon for me. I get coupons in Groupon and half of them are for nail salons. I don't need a coupon for a nail salon. I'd rather have a coupon from FutureShop. But how is Groupon going to know that I'd rather have a coupon from FutureShop? Visa knows. They look at my bill. They can look at where the most money I've spent is in the last 5 years. You know, that's easy for them to do and provide those targeted coupons, which is better for retailers because obviously the redemption rate for a targeted coupon is astronomical compared to an untargeted coupon. Yeah. And better for customers because I'd rather take advantage of saving $10 or $5 or 10% or whatever it is than have a coupon that's useless.
But the great part of this is that they don't even have to push you a coupon, right? So I'm not a big advocate of coupon at point of sale, right? I never believe that you should ever get a discount when when you've actually handed them the credit card. But at that point, at point of sale, what about something that entices them back into the store automatically, right? Oh, by the way, here, you know, it's like Banana Republic does this when you buy. They say, oh, you've got 15% off on your next purchase. Come on in, right? But this really does. When you take all that purchase data, the purchase history, how often you're in the store, all that kind of stuff, and you cram it into that, at that point of sale, which I guess they're going to be rolling out new equipment, or they're supporting NFC as well. But at that point of sale, they can push you something that's so relevant that if you're only in that store 6 times a year, it might get you in there 7th, right? That is so powerful, man. And what is it? Where does that end up? Right in your digital wallet. You don't even have to worry about it. The next time you're in the store, it's there and active for you. That Absolutely. Is killer.
And that's that whole, closing that circle. I was going to say that clerk, but the loop.
The lurkle. That's good. Yeah.
Around are going like when you talk about check-ins and how check-ins are pretty much useless. If you're already in the store, you're already in the store, right? What are you doing with that check-in? Why do you have check-in there? And what about location-based services? How do you get someone's location when they're walking around? Because they can't have their GPS going all the time. Is it useful individually? Well, you need to tie things together. You need to look at social networks. But what about purchase history? Well, you need to tie this to this over here. What about push data and engagement? Well, in this case, you have everything. So you make a payment, you buy an iPod, and you walk out. Immediately you get 15% off any iPod accessory from that store. The next time you walk into the store, it can trigger via NFC on there as you walk through the door to say, hey, you were here before, you bought an iPad, remember that coupon? Pop it up. So as you walk into the store, you don't have to check in. Yep. You don't need GPS systems for that. Right there, that's location-based services in a nutshell without using GPS, targeted to the last thing you bought to give you an incentive to something that you might be buying anyways when you walk in, but it certainly reminds you to add that to your cart.
I mean, this is big, and we all knew that Visa, Dee Hock, he didn't start Visa, but he was tasked with growing Visa into a national and international brand. These guys have created the credit card, ultimately, the commercial credit card. These guys are going to create the commercial payment system when it comes to near-field communication and digital payments, what they're doing here. You expected this. What I didn't expect was the speed with which this came. So they make an announcement. They're rolling it out. It's like Apple versus RIM, right? Make an announcement. They're rolling out in the fall. Right? They're rolling it out in mere months, not years. But So I'm really impressed with this. I'm going to wait and see, hold ultimate judgment until I start to use this in the fall, because when it comes out. But if you haven't seen the video yet, go and take a look at it. It's one of those things that'll make you say, wow, it's pretty disruptive when it comes to a lot of companies that are out there. So Visa, good on them. Love it. Our next story, viruses. So Juniper Networks came out with an article with a report saying that there are, I guess the report was on potential threats in mobile technology, and there was a 400% increase in Android malware. So this is, on-device Trojans. This is on-device viruses, or anything that is going to have an impact on the device. This is a pretty significant number. I mean, it's inflated because probably yesterday or a year ago there wasn't this much because Android wasn't as dominant. But it's also, if you're in the mobile industry, I don't think it's to be expected, especially on Android, because there are no gates, right? Like if you can root your phone, and that's something that's inherent with it. Like at the Google I/O conference, they were talking about we encourage you to root your phone, right? That's what their slogan is, basically. You're bound to find people who are going to exploit that for maliciousness and malware. Yeah. This is a pretty big number.
And as you say, the number is headline grabbing at 400%. If there was 1 last year and there's 5 this year, that's a 400% increase. So yeah. The point is not that it's a 400% increase. The point is, as you say, that Android is susceptible more so than either of the other 2 leading smartphone platforms, in RIM or an iPhone, to viruses, just by the nature of its architecture.
Yeah.
Its architecture is its strength, and it's also it's a weakness of it. And it's one of those things that no one has really paid attention to viruses on smartphones before.
Never.
Mainly because it's been difficult to do. As much as people would like to say, well, if someone wanted to, they could hack into it. That's not necessarily the case for everything. Some smartphones, like BlackBerry, but designed from security from the ground up. I've been using them for years, involved in building stuff for them. I know how much of a pain in the ass the security is for developers sometimes, and how hard it would be to actually build something malicious for some of those old BlackBerries that could actually do any real damage.
Yeah.
So I think that it's something that we need to pay attention to in mobile, especially on Android as we move forward, and potentially on Playbook as we move forward as well. It's something about having a more powerful OS that gives more options for people, right? So RIM is going to have I know RIM is going to be crazy careful with what they do with the Playbook,
yep.
But they're going to have to be even extra careful because the OS is built on on top of stuff that wasn't written from the ground up inside the company. So it's one of those cases where as power increases and functionality increases, holes need to be opened up to provide access to those. And if you're not careful in how you open that access up on a device, you can open holes into people's user data for sure.
Yeah, and the fact is that the architecture of the BlackBerry contains or controls what is accessible by the software applications that people install on them. So there are free-range applications that you can download and install from a website, but they basically sandbox it so you can't impact the functioning of the device. Is that the same case for Android, where it's because you can download it, but because you can root it, it has full access to everything, I think. That poses a greater risk, obviously.
But even if you don't root your Android phone, it's still way more open, and files are far more easy to access between applications and cross applications than they are on any of the other smartphone platforms. So even a non-rooted Android phone is much more susceptible to viruses and malware than a rooted Android, than the other platforms are. And it's not just like when we think viruses for mobile phones, we always think what you download, something that will be a virus on it. But the thing about Android in particular is that when you plug it into your desktop, it's a USB drive, and you can access most of the files on the Android phone. So if you have a virus running on your PC that detects an Android phone, could install a virus on your Android phone when you plug it into your computer, in theory. Now virus scanners are obviously going to look for detect these things and get updated, but there's multiple points of attack on an Android phone that just don't exist on some of the other platforms. So it's something that Google is going to have to be aware of, and makes me really wish that I had written my fake virus scanner and put it up for sale for 99 cents.
You still could. You could charge it to like $30 for it.
We're just gonna have it go like scanning for viruses, and basically, since there were no viruses, say found none.
Yeah, nice. Somebody's done it. I'm pretty sure that by now somebody's gone up there. But one of the big things that ends up happening with any kind of new technologies, it happened with the web, was the spam a lot, right? Which was you'd get a spam, and there are these phishing scams that were out there. You get an email message, and it would say, "Hey, listen, your bank has been your bank account has been corrupted. Click here and type in your username and your password to fix it. We just have to confirm your identity." And people did that. And as consumption of these devices becomes more mainstream, and people who are trying to make a decision between Android and iPhone and BlackBerry, and they're making those decisions across all of them ultimately, but they don't have a deep understanding of the technology, they're going to get these SMS messages or MMS messages or the same that are going to say, "Hey, click here because you've won something," and people are going to click here. Or when they walk into a location, maybe it's geolocation virus. When you walk in somewhere, it sends you an SMS automatically, and it says, "Click in here, you won a latte." And then that's another form of virus that you really can't weed out by a virus checker. You're going to have to weed that out by common sense, right? And that's where it falls, because sometimes we're human, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's one of those. It's a case of looking at all the different ways in which, what are we classifying? We're talking about malware, really. Like this article says malware, and a lot of times here we're using the word virus, and you're right. It's not just about viruses. There's malware that's spam bots, right? There's malware that doesn't attack you, but attacks other people that are out there. And there's SMS campaigns that blast you and try and charge you for messages, and that's has been a problem in the past with some SMS marketing campaigns. But
what do you think? What do you think that? Certainly when Visa announces something like the e-wallet. And then the next story that we have right after that is about viruses on these devices that are opening it up for exploitation. That's got to be a concern, but that's one of the reasons why Visa, you go with somebody like Visa as an e-wallet provider, right? For fraud and security alerts. Everything that they've got is probably wrapped up in a nice little cellophane bubble that you can't get into, is right. You can't manipulate, even if it is a virus.
Yeah, it's the same kind of argument that you used to hear about the web, which was when you had people who said, "Oh, there's no way I'm doing banking on the web because I hear about all these attacks and all these break-ins of people's websites."
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between attacking a bank's website and attacking Joe's store's website. And a lot of people didn't really know how the differences between a secure website and a non-secure website really impacted their security. Yeah. But I think now the message is fairly clear to most people that when you're using a bank or secure website, it is secure, and people have that confidence in it. Online banking is skyrocketing, and mobile banking is skyrocketing in terms of usage. So people are trusting certain institutions who haven't had break-ins. When was the last time you heard about a bank get broken into through its website or through the information, or a major credit card company? You don't hear about that kind of stuff, and not just because people are trying to sweep it under the rug, because it just doesn't happen much. It is pretty secure. What you hear about is random stores getting broken into and having their personal information and personal data shared, and stores that do bad things that break the rules, like store the credit card information on their databases, that get compromised. But it's not the credit card companies, and it's not the banks.
Nope.
So even if you're running on an insecure platform, having a secure brand like Visa tell you, "Look, we're telling you our app is secure," that has weight. Yeah,
they're not Sony, who didn't apply any kind of update or patch, and then we're surprised that 25 million credit cards were stolen, right? Way to go, guys. Day 22, by the way, of no Sony. And I think it's so. What we're talking about here is viruses. What we're talking about here is the ability to scare people into walking away from mobile, and I think that's what these kind of 400% increase announcements do. And it's like those people who are concerned about this is that they should be, but when it comes to banking, it's an interesting aspect is that I'm not worried when my local branch gets robbed, right? They're not taking my money, right? They might be being robbed, but ultimately my money's secure somewhere else, right? In somebody else's pocket. So, you got to take all this with a grain of salt. Although we're going to see more and more of this as these devices become more and more important to all of us. you're going to be able to, there are going to be some viruses. And we know that. There's going to be some massive failure somewhere, and we're all prepared for it. It might happen, it might not. But there was with the web, there it was with Sony, and there's going to be with mobile. We just know it. And people will get smarter as a result.
Yeah, and you made a really good analogy there that no one cares if their bank is broken into physically because all they're losing is money. In the digital realm, what people are worried about is not their money. What they're worried about is their identity and their personal information. And that is the difference between people's concerns about being online security versus physical security. Is everybody knows that even if your bank gets compromised and your money gets drained from your account, you're still getting your money back because it's all protected, it's all insured. Even credit cards, like people who are worried about using their credit card online, and I'm like, who cares? If your credit card gets stolen, you report it, and you're not liable for any of the losses, or there's a $50 maximum or something. So it's not a big deal. What's a big deal is if someone gets access to enough of all of your personal information to do identity theft. Yeah,
and that's where Visa well, from Visa to virus to video. This is a good story with I think large ramifications because I think it's a really good testing ground. I've downloaded a number of applications in Canada that allow me to watch television shows that have been broadcast on some of the major networks, like Global's app. CTV doesn't have an app. I found that out, but City TV does. CTV, I don't understand why you don't, but everybody else does. You guys should as well. And this is the story about HBO hitting 1 million downloads for their iPad app, which is called HBO Go, in 1 week. So very few applications get to 1 million downloads to begin with. Even fewer get it to within a week. You get 1 million downloads in a week. And the only people that have really kind of beaten them are Skype, who it took a couple of days, and Angry Birds. In like an hour.
Yeah, it really shows the appetite people have for looking for brand name content on their mobile device. So HBO was one of the largest entertainment brands in the United States, maybe the world. I honestly don't know what its penetration is like outside of the United States and Canada with HBO Canada. It's pretty big. So. What this is really showing, that HBO can launch an app with a big media brand on it, that people value the content that HBO is providing, and they can do it independently. Yeah. They don't have to go through a company like Netflix. And I think there's an interesting analogy here in that Netflix has really been taking over in the last couple of years as the premier video rental service. And iTunes does a lot of video rentals, but has been kind of constrained by Apple, and that Apple prioritizes Apple products with iTunes and doesn't let you stream onto the BlackBerry or onto your Android device or onto your TV unless you're using an Apple TV. So there's this huge other market, which in smartphones, Android and RIM have been filling, and in video rentals, Netflix has been filling and really growing into being the market leader in doing video rentals and downloaded video content within North America. And everybody kind of was like, well, I guess accepting that they'll be the leader, and if you wanted to be on their service or if you wanted to be successful, you had to be on their service.
Yep.
I think what HBO is really showing is that, if you have a big enough brand, you don't have to go with the status quo. You can act independently and be very successful.
Well, if you've ever tried to use a television guide these days, right? Like hit guide right now. If you're if you're sitting there watching the TV, hit guide.
Oh, wait. We'll pause 5 seconds while we wait for the guide to load for you.
Exactly, and then switch a day, or go try to find something by its name, not on the channel. That's the reason here. I think that the television networks can learn a ton about how to find content, and that's why if it's a toss up between even trying to find a show, or using on demand, or just loading it up on an iPad, and then flipping it to my Mac TV, my Apple TV, that's easy, right? So, but HBO, 1 million downloads, and I think that what they did, so they spurned Netflix. They said no to Netflix. They said we're going to go on our own. They got 1 million downloads in the first week, and that's just going to grow. It kind of proves that there is a subscriber base, a desire for a subscriber base for this. They also now have 1 million email addresses, ultimately. right? They know who their customer is. They can communicate with that person. They're going to be doing some Easter eggs, which is basically giving next week's show ahead of time at the end of streaming of one show. The really interesting piece of this, which was brought up in a Fast Company article by David Zacks, was that this emboldens HBO not to stay isolated, but to ask for much more. It improves their brand and the value of them being in Netflix. Whereas one, as you said, Netflix is the de facto channel, and it's like being in Walmart. You know, if you're selling retail, you aspire to have your product on the shelves of Walmart because of the volume that they get in their stores and the reach that they have. That's what Netflix is like. But what HBO is saying, no. Our value is now increased, and Netflix, you need us in order to succeed a little bit more because of the demand that we've generated. Which I love that, right? HBO, the scrappy channel.
And it's not just Netflix. I honestly think that we could look back at this in 3 years and say this was the straw that broke the camel's back for Apple and for Netflix in terms of being sole sources for aggregation of major branded content. If HBO can have this effect, what can another major company that has a brand do that has music or that has videos and movies? What can Paramount do? What if Paramount put up an app for all the Paramount movies that they produce?
Yep.
Could they do 1 million downloads as well for that? Could they then say to Apple and iTunes, hey, you know what? We don't really want to give you 30%. We only want to give you 10% because we're making so much money off our other one that we think if it wasn't available on iTunes, people would know to come to our app and get it.
Yeah.
And is this going to change either one, if the providers like iTunes actually have all of the major media companies available to them, or two, what the rate that those companies can charge for distribution, like iTunes, like Netflix?
Well, you may just be right, but if you look at what's happening in the publishing industry, which is a completely different industry, is that now a lot of these brands are acquiescing to Apple, right? And saying, listen, yeah, we'll do the subscription rates through you. We're also only going to charge $1.99 now, or $20 a year for a wired subscription. It's not $5 like it was. So you start to see these things kind of falling in line with Apple, and it's kind of Apple leading the way. And maybe, and I think that you're right, HBO is a specialty channel with multiple shows, and I think that it works very well with HBO. But I always think that, I'm a Springsteen fan. I admitted that. Why can't I just have a Springsteen app, right? That has all his music or whatever that I can buy, bootlegs or anything like that, or videos or movies or anything, because I don't need an iTunes because it's too broad for me, right? I just need a Springsteen app. So somebody invent a Springsteen app for me. Would you? I'll buy it for sure. But you worry that there's going to be silos, and there are people who say, look, I'm not going to buy an app for every brand that I like. I'm not going to have an app for Springsteen, for whoever. But what I will have is an app like for HBO because I watch every one of their shows, right? If I don't, I love their programming anyways, so I'll be a part of that. I think that that it suits it very well to be independent, and the shows could eventually end up, or some of the shows could end up on Netflix. But I love the idea of an HBO branded app, just the way that I like the Global app or the City TV app.
And the difference with the major media publications who have acquiesced to Apple is that the media, the physical media industry, magazines, newspapers, etc., and books to some extent, although they're much further along the path, the transition to a digital model for them has been painful and is nowhere near complete.
No.
They are going through an upheaval in their industry. The movie industry went through that already. Yep. The digital transition for movies has happened over the last decade. Yep. No longer do theaters receive reels. Theaters receive a digital copy of a movie that they show on the screen. There's no reels going around up in the projector rooms anymore. Yeah. It's all digital. So movies have moved into the digital realm, and therefore, TV shows as well, because production companies who make movies and TV shows they work hand in hand and often are the same. So you end up with this digital library of content, which can now be monetized in different ways because there's kind of accepted ways of paying for things. All the trees have been shaken out. iTunes has shown a model how much money people will pay, but people will pay that same amount of money off of iTunes. It's not iTunes that makes it cool to pay 99 cents for something. It's the content itself. It's the right price point for the piece of content. So now that industry is shaken out, knows what they can charge, now the big brands can say, okay, people accept digital downloads of content, we can now say, you just have to look over here. We don't have to convince you about digital anymore. All we're convincing you is that our brand is worth having an icon on your screen for. And I think you will see that, 3, 4, 5 years from now, the publishing industry, after going through an upheaval and changing their business model and figuring out how much they can charge for content digitally, they'll do the exact same thing. They'll say, okay, we now know how to do this business. We have a big enough brand. We can do it ourselves.
It's fascinating to watch this because it's they're building their business models as they're moving, right? So they're running and trying to change it at the same time. But it just proves 1 million downloads in a week, 1 million email addresses added to that list, a bunch more revenue, exposure for all their shows, an isolated audience like this. I'd be interested to see the second side of that, which is the usage statistics of the app going beyond. Does it increase the the reach or the regency of the content that they're watching it? Just because I like The Sopranos, now all of a sudden am I going to like something else, right?
Yeah.
So, but 1 million downloads, you can't argue with that. 1 million downloads. 1 million downloads.
Very impressive. Very impressive.
So just to finish up on that thought, one of the great things that they've got is with these 1 million people that have downloaded it after the first week, we keep forgetting that it's increasing as we go. But what if they wanted to introduce a new television show? Right? Not on the networks yet, and see if anybody is interested in watching that show. My God, this is the perfect venue for doing that. This changes TV.
For sure. You're right, and that's an excellent point, is that when you have direct access to your customers, you have multiple ways of getting content to them. And you're not dependent on finding a time slot on your network to show a preview of a new show. You can show it anytime. You can produce a small segment of it, put it up, produce 3 or 4 small shorts. And if they're popular, then expand it into a real show. And you can do a less production value for a mobile video distribution as well. So, think of launching, well, I guess, because HBO doesn't really do comedies. They're more of dramas and adventure and that kind of stuff. But, if they could produce a story, if they could put content out there saying, here's the story for a show launching in the fall that they haven't greenlit yet, but it's the backstory for it, right? See how many people are interested in that. You can using social media for TV now, and mobile is part of social media, using that to gauge interest, to generate interest too. So maybe just launching a TV show, you get however many people were watching the previews for it. This time This time you put it on your mobile app. You're not dependent on Nielsen ratings, which are ridiculous. You're not dependent on the cable company. You know how many views you had. You can have a like button on it. You know how many people liked it and how many people disliked it. So you can totally plan your schedules, and you can ask people direct questions. Now, of course, they've had some interaction with their customer base over the years through having popular online properties, but this just brings it much more personal to the user.
Yeah, boy, does it ever. And I think that's, they've already changed the way that people would watch the shows to begin with. They've changed that behavior. This is just another one of those things that you leverage that change in behavior. So HBO, 1 million downloads and counting, and changing the way that we are watching television. And that's it. We're changing the way that we follow the mobile industry, right, Jeff?
Yes, this is the new wave of following the mobile industry.
This is it. And
right
episode
here. It doesn't look so special behind me, but it looks better behind you. So.
That's right. I'll just move out of the way. It looks fine.
Just superimpose your background on mine, so it looks like I have this nicer room behind me.
If I had that kind of video skills, do you think I'd be doing this? Come on. Of course I would, because I love it. And we love you guys watching, listening, and give us some feedback. We're very interested in what you have to say. If you like the show, if you missed it last week, give us some hell. Untether@gmail.com. This obviously can be found on untether.tv. It can be found at bacononthego.com as well, and syndicated on iTunes. Do not forget you can subscribe, even if it's not up on the websites yet. That's the first place that it arrives. So if you really need your fix, that's the best place to get it. iTunes is and subscribe there, either an audio or video feed for iTunes. Do it at iTunes. Do it at iTunes. There's a link somewhere right above us right now. Go and link there, and you'll have the episodes even before they're named. You'll have them that raw.
Wow.
Jeff can be found at bacononthego.com or about.me/JeffBacon. I am at untether.tv, and we appreciate you guys sticking around for episode number 15. We'll see you next week for number 16. Promise. Scout's honor. See you, Jeff.
See you, Rob.